I saw a Dave Chappelle acceptance speech for Jay-Z at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And there was a line he said, you can always count on Dave Chappelle to give you some different points of views, really loop it in with politics and culture. He's one of the great philosophers of all time, if you ask me. But he said that American pie isn't made of apples, but whatever you can get your hands on. I thought that was one of the best lines of all time. Kind of what I took from it, I started to think about the entrepreneurs that I've read about and how they got started. The J. Paul Gettys, John D. Rockefellers, more modern guys like Brad Jacobs, who's in logistics and rolling up businesses. I was in the midst of reading a Kennedy, the Kennedy family book, talked about the Irish Catholic community in the early 1900s, how they were viewed and how they viewed themselves and how they stuck together, all the different industries that they got involved in, and eventually got into politics. And you think about a community that was looked down upon. They really congregated together. The Irish Catholic community really made something, right? Made something of themselves, of their community, of their, future generations. They really set those folks up to really be successful, do some really cool things in America. You talk about Eastern Europeans that were flat out murdered. There's no other way to say it. Discriminated against. And they came to America with the mindset of, hey, I'm gonna make something of myself. Somebody like Art Williams, who started the A.L. Williams insurance company, that his whole mindset was, hey, buy term insurance, invest the difference into mutual funds, and we're gonna outsell Prudential, which is one of the biggest companies of all time in the insurance business, still around today. Small town guy out of South Georgia. If you look up A.L. Williams in some of his speeches, he's got a southern drawl. He doesn't come from anything. His dad died in his 40s. He was a football coach all the way into his 30s. American pie is just made of whatever you can get your hands on. And I think it's important for us to find out what lane we want to get into and provide just as much value as we can. Like in the early 1900s, prior to that, manufacturing oil, like a lot of the natural and core processes that we live on today, those spaces have been filled, right? Like we don't need another Tyson Foods. We don't need another Rockefeller Corporation to discover oil. Like that lane has been filled. A lot of our billionaires today are in EV, space exploration, commerce, different things. But a lot, our next billionaires and folks who are worth hundreds of billions of dollars are going to be in AI and tech. But you can be ultra successful finding what you can get your hands on. For me, it's creating wealth, my clients, through multifamily investing, right? So we want to create transparency and access to quality multifamily deals. We're just a merchant. Our company's going to be worth tens of millions of dollars within the next 10 years. Harmon Real Estate Company, our brokerage. It's going to be a huge thing. We're just a merchant. We're helping people trade multifamily buildings. That's it. And to have immense success is just finding what you can get your hands on. You want to be ethical. You want to have integrity. You have to be filling a need. You have to be solving a big enough problem. So for us, helping owners of multifamily properties unlock unrealized value. You're receiving cash flow, you're receiving tax benefits, but until you have that exit, you're not really getting any big sums of money that you can really do things with. You can cash flow, you can refinance, right? And get a portion of your value. But if you want to unlock all the value that you've built up in your property, our job is to give you quality resources, give you those big firm resources wherever you are. We'll go to the small markets. I'm listing 60 units in Batesville, Arkansas, where Lyons College is located, right? Small little college. Property was built in 2003. Owner's been building up the asset, remodel half of the units, and he wants to unlock his value. Me being able to go to that small town, give him big resources, because the big firms aren't coming. They ain't gonna believe in that small town, that $3 million property. They got 15 brokers to feed on their team and staff. A $3 million deal isn't enough. But I'll go there with the same resources that big firm has provided to that owner, give them excitement, give them a roadmap of how they can unlock that value. So we got big firm resources. We'll go to the small towns, right? Those are just some of the things that make us different. You got to find your lane and what you do. And also, I've read, I love to read history. J. Paul Getty helped me understand this for myself, and I've always done it. I was actually a history minor in college. And not because I wanted to be a historian, I just really didn't enjoy school necessarily, and history was one of those subjects where it actually caught my attention and I wanted to study. So I got a minor in history and a major in psychology. And he talks about the reason that understanding history is so important is because you want to understand how past generations, the issues that they dealt with, the things that made them prosperous. You want to really understand past generations and understand how we got to where we are now, and to also be able to project the future. It helps a young man really understand the landscape that they have to live in and operate in. And I thought that was really cool, and it was a way for me to define what I've always kind of innately known, but I was able to define it based on reading, J. Paul Getty. J. Paul Getty had a very wealthy father. He was in the oil and gas business. His father was super wealthy, but he said that when his father passed away, I think he was in his 50s. At that point, he received about $500,000 from him. Prior to that, they had done some partnerships, but it was a co-investment. His father was a partner in his deals, but he was already a millionaire before he ever did anything with his father. The mindset of this guy, the ability to calculate risk very objectively, right? It wasn't emotional. Him being able to cut his losses and move on to another patch, not be stuck in, hey, I've already invested in this, I gotta go all the way. No, Lord, he'll cut his losses and move on to another deal. He'll also pass on a deal and come back later on, pay an increased price, and still take the opportunity. I really just pulled a lot from J. Paul Getty, even though his personal life was pretty turbulent. If you read a little bit about the Getty family, like their family was a little different, dealt with a lot of issues, but his mindset around business and life and the reason why he got into the oil and gas industry, how he got into it, the way he calculated his risk, how he cut losses, how he promoted and elevated staff. Like he really went through the trenches of understanding how to run a business. But it all started with him just finding the lane. Brad Jacobs, I read a book about him, how to make a few $1 billion, and he lays out a lot of things about his ethos and how he understands business. And he started to do a lot of podcasts over the past few years, and I've started to really enjoy him and enjoy the way that he understands business. But for him, the industries are trash. It's construction materials, it's logistics, it's natural material. He likes boring industries, but he wants them to have enough scale for him to take it public. Like he likes the liquidity that public companies afford him. He likes having the best talent in the world on his teams. He has a playbook that he takes from business to business, to industry to industry. The way he rolls out his businesses, the way he does mergers and acquisitions, like he'll start a company from scratch and then he'll start to buy competitors and consolidate the space. You see QXO, XPO, Waste Management, a lot of these different businesses that are just normal businesses in any town in the world. Those are Brad Jacobs companies. He's got the scale, but they're just normal businesses, right? I applied to get some credit to buy roofing materials at QXO, right? They just bought Beacon. They got an office here in Fort Smith, right? And it's this guy I've been reading about and learning about. And like, I've grown to really admire. It's just boring, normal stuff, right? Somewhere along the way in history, and it's always been this way, and that's why I love to read history, you read about the class systems over the course of existence of just humanity. Merchants, the middle class, the lower middle class has always been looked down upon. But at the same time, that class has so much buying power that you have to focus on them, provide value to them so they can buy products from you. If you are an upper class entrepreneur, business owner, corporation, whatever, most of the buying power in this country is in that, lower to middle class, who you will call a high class or corporation or entrepreneur, however you want to define those people. A lot of their products are serving that class. So I think it's very important for us to educate ourselves about how we can be of service and be of value to others, right? My lane is multifamily housing. I'm going to find different ways to be creative and add value to that community in that space, because I feel like that's where a lot of my family's wealth and a lot of my impact is going to come from. Will I get into other industries? Absolutely. I'm going to find out how I'm going to make my apple pie. For me and for you, you got to find the same. Ultimately find where you can fit into the space, right? Everybody wants to be their own boss. Everybody wants to have freedom, access invested capital, and just all these, that we want to have prosperity, we would have all these things. And that's what this country is about. It's the opportunity. So the opportunity is there. We just got to find our space, make sure we're creating value. There are no roadblocks to success. There are no roadblocks to prosperity. A lot of it is in our minds, right? For me, I try to cut out anything, any preconceived notions that I have within myself and others may have of me, and try to provide value and know that the value that I'm providing, it is enough to create the life that I want to have, create the impact that I want to have. So that's just what I do, right? That's the way I look at things. So